The glow of the phone screen illuminated the dark room, casting sharp angles of light across my face. I felt the air grow thick around me, each breath a reminder that betrayal had a weight, and that weight was crushing. I stared at the cold pixels defiantly presenting the evidence. There it was, clear, undeniable proof. He thought I'd never find out. That was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't the betrayal itself that pierced my chest. It was the realization of how little he regarded me, how he believed he could shatter my trust without consequence. Heartbreak morphed into a chilling clarity. Pain is necessary, but response is optional. I wouldn't provide him the theater of my suffering. Instead, I wore a mask of calm. The thought of confrontation flickered in my mind, tempting and loud, but I silenced it with a smile. I chose a different path. Instead of anger, I embraced approachability. I forgave him, and in that act of apparent weakness, I became dangerous. I played the role of the faithful friend, the understanding confidant, eliciting fleeting moments of laughter over dinners filled with poisoned silence. He had no idea the harpoon of vengeance I was gripping behind my back while feigning normalcy. As the days turned to weeks, I dissected his every move. I became an actor in my own life, carefully recording everything. The more comfortable he became, the deeper the layers of his arrogance unfurled. I was no longer a victim. I transformed into a predator hidden within the guise of forgiveness. My detachment grew, and with it, a thrill like no other. I was plotting in the shadows, the thrill of anticipation building like an intricate symphony waiting for a crescendo. Months passed, and I assembled my quiet arsenal. Screenshots, voice notes, financial details, each a thread in the web I was weaving. I meticulously transferred it all into a secure file labeled "For the Day." Each click felt electric. This was control, a razor-sharp focus feeding the depths of my resolve. Revenge didn't need to be rash. It demanded structure and precision. The real beauty of this game lay in the rope I offered him. I subtly encouraged his freedom, letting him think I was oblivious, a mere spectator. The less he feared me, the more reckless he became, and with each misstep, I drew closer to the calm before the storm. Now, 6 months in, my plan was airtight, every stitch of evidence woven into a tapestry of truth and silence. I felt ready, poised at the precipice, waiting for the right moment to unleash my carefully orchestrated chaos. And then it came. A text from him. Another lie. Another betrayal to save in the depths of my folder. Last entry. In the dark moments before the execution, I found solace. The calm thrummed like a taunt, the stillness pregnant with potential. He thought he was untouchable, but I, standing in quiet power, knew the storm was merely a heartbeats away. The weight of the decision settled around me like an unexpected fog, thick and suffocating yet oddly comforting. In that moment of clarity, I realized my emotional armor was forged not through outbursts or angry confrontations, but through a smile, the kind that hides daggers behind a veneer of forgiveness. While he believed I was gathering my emotions, I was weaving a different narrative. The challenge would not lie in retaliation, but in disarming him with an empty facade. I chose approachability. It was a game only I could see, a mask of tranquility draped over a brewing storm. I exchanged laughter over dinners that echoed with silence, our conversations a delicate dance of subtext. He divulged his ambitions, fears, and even his misguided dreams, unaware that I was cataloging every granular detail, his careless betrayals, the slip of his tongue when he thought I would not notice. Each revelation became a brick in the wall of my fortress, sturdy yet subtle. "Forgiven," I whispered in my mind as I nodded at his jokes, his careless humor underlined by soothing laughter. This wasn't weakness, it was calculated restraint. I forgave him not because I meant it, but because it elevated me. I forgave him, and that's when I became dangerous. In this charade, I wielded power that screamed louder than any confrontation. The silence in his eyes as I smiled back was worth 1,000 screams. Weeks morphed into months. Time slipped through my fingers, but during that span, I became adept at preserving normalcy. I adopted the role of a confidant, always there yet ever distant, feigning indifference while meticulously recording his movements. Every casual text exchange became a data point, each discarded post on social media a snapshot of his ever-expanding arrogance. It was intoxicating. The thrill sharpened my senses, my detachment from emotional chaos blossoming into something darker. Lesser men would have cracked, I thought as I lay in bed at night, replaying every interaction in vivid detail, examining the cracks in his bravado. This beautiful masquerade granted me a unique vantage point. He felt secure, almost untouchable, and with that false sense of security, he began to unravel like catgut string, loose and precarious. As I continued to drain the color from my initial agony, I quietly began to assemble my arsenal. Screenshots, voice notes, behavioral patterns. I was building a reservoir of evidence, the backbone of my looming reckoning. I transferred everything into a secure file labeled "For the Day," a digital tomb of his indiscretions. Each click reverberated through me. There was exquisite power in playing the long game, a control I had never before tasted. He remained blissfully unaware, sinking further into his arrogance, each misstep a testament to his diminishing caution. The less he feared me, the more reckless he became. I expertly spun the web, the silence sharp with expectation as his grip faltered, and I encouraged his freedom without question, without hesitance. These months cultivated a stillness in me, a profound understanding of the calm before war. I stood poised on the edge of a carefully orchestrated storm, keenly aware of every detail I had gathered. Then, right on cue, a text arrived. A new lie, another betrayal for my folder. It would be the last entry. As I absorbed the darkness around me, the thrill ebbed at first, then surged anew. The moment was approaching, and I was drowning in adrenaline, alive with purpose. Despair would not come from confrontation. It was about to manifest from locked doors and veiled truths. He thought he was untouchable, but I was the architect of his reckoning, standing silent yet unyielding, the calm before the storm blending seamlessly with the chaos I was about to unleash. The weeks rolled by like shadowed whispers, each day merging into the next beneath the polished veneer of my existence. I wore my mask of forgiveness well, but beneath that crafted facade, the gears of my meticulously orchestrated plan clicked steadily into place. I became an expert in the art of subtlety, crafting a life that seemed untroubled while I gathered the pieces of his betrayal. Laughter filled the rooms, a hollow echo of what used to be genuine joy. Dinners transformed into scripted performances. I could almost hear the audience's applause in my mind as he regaled me with tales of ambitions long derailed. He didn't realize every word fell into my waiting hands like ripe fruit, evidence of his ego and carelessness laid bare. The more comfort he felt in my presence, the more attentive I became to the slipstreams of his arrogance. I noted every detail as though it were a brushstroke on a vast canvas. His texts became manuscripts of manipulation, his social media posts chapters in a complex narrative unraveling slowly before my eyes. I felt like a puppeteer, strings tethered to each movement he made. He had no clue that every like, every comment was being recorded, the clicking sound conspiring with my heart to build the crescendo of my control. The thrill of this deception thrummed through my veins like electricity. I often watched him toss his head back, enveloped in laughter, blissfully unaware of the predator lurking beneath my skin. "You've made it too easy," I would think, allowing a smile to slip across my face, a passive mask that concealed the storm within. Engaging with him was not a chore, but an elaborate dance, each step calculated to elude detection. I spent late nights assembling my arsenal, the blue light of the screen illuminating the dark truths tucked away. Each screenshot, every fragmented voice note, was a testimony to his transgressions, a layering of evidence as delicate and deadly as spun glass. I meticulously categorized my collection, enveloping each piece in the secure digital folder labeled "For the Day." This wasn't just information. It was power, a fortress built from the ruins of my shattered trust. As the months passed, he invited me into circles and conversations, each opportunity a chance to tighten the noose. He spoke freely, not out of generosity but from arrogance. He invited me to share his confidence, unaware that every shared secret was salt in a wound I had yet to inflict. The more he unbuttoned his armor around me, the more reckless became his choices. "You do not envision the storm that's brewing," I thought as I quietly watched, my heart steady, my resolve unyielding. Now, with my plan in full motion, I knew the time was near. I stepped into the realm of manipulation, adjusting my surroundings like a chessboard, positioning pawns where necessary and pulling back when needed. Even in his presence, I felt the shadows lengthening, quietly aligning with the darkness I was harboring. I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing, a hunter, poised for the opportune moment. Then it came, another lie delivered straight to my phone. The thrill of recognition washed over me, invigorating my pulse as I saved it into the depths of my folder. That was the last entry, my final confirmation that the final threads were in place. I felt powerful, like a master conductor drawing towards the climax of a symphony. Years of hurt and indignation swirled within me, slowly converging into one point, a controlled explosion of truth, just waiting to be detonated. The calm around me swelled with intention, pregnant with potential, casting shadows thicker than night itself. He thought he was untouchable, locked in his unthinking bravado. But I was merely the architect of his demise, silently intensifying the pressure beneath the surface. The storm was only a heartbeat away, and when it broke, he would have no idea who had set it in motion. The months had waxed and waned like the moon's indifferent phases, each day folding seamlessly into the next, all under the guise of normalcy, an intricate tapestry woven from careful deliberation. I stood amidst the illusions, every interaction a meticulously choreographed dance, every laugh echoing like a haunting reminder that under the surface bred the quietest of storms. Beneath my mask of forgiveness, the machinery of my revenge hummed steadily, a whispering engine of cold precision. His face, once familiar, became the canvas upon which I painted my strategy, each arrogance-laden word he spoke splattering against the sterile walls of my resolve. I had grown adept at reflecting his laughter, returning his charisma with the warmth of a sun that never quite shone. Yet behind the translucence of my smile lay the chilling awareness of the predator I had become. Hunting in silence, poised for the proverbial atrophy of his pride. Dinner conversations became my theater, where I donned the role of the dutiful confidant, absorbing each detail he unwittingly let slip. "Did you hear how much I made on that last deal?" He'd boast, arrogance bleeding into every syllable. The bounty of his disclosures gathered like fruit ripe for harvest. His flaws, his weaknesses, and his careless exploits all carefully catalogued, imbued with potential energy, waiting for the opportune moment to explode. The thrill of it thrummed beneath my skin, a current of cold satisfaction. I noted each slip, a fragile weakness veiled beneath an armor of confidence, his rebounding cheer only solidifying the hollowness of his braggadocio. I imagined the tang of a sharpened blade pressing against his ego, quietly coaxing it to unravel. Each admission from him fed a smoldering fire in my chest, an anticipation culminating into a singularity of purpose. Each late night, the screen illuminated a different avenue of my revenge. Pixels locked tight within the fortress I had built, the digital sanctuary named for the day. Screenshots fluttered like fallen leaves, voice notes time-stamped shards of evidence, stitching together a seamless narrative of his arrogance. I swept through his careless betrayals like a ghost, silent, unseen, but always there, an omnipotent presence preparing the landscape for quiet devastation. Patience, I told myself. This is the true art. The beauty was layered, an exquisite anticipation that thrived on his ignorance. I nudged the boundaries of our interactions gently, granting him an illusion of freedom, a rope laden with knots, each coil tightening as he moved forward uninhibited. He felt powerful, roaring into the void, unaware that the walls were closing in around him like the walls of a labyrinth, every twist concealing a darker truth. The less he felt the need to be cautious, the more reckless he became, slipping deeper into arrogance, belittling the very void that surrounded him. The day I saved the last entry to my vault marked the moment of unfurling. It hadn't yet dawned on him how tightly I had woven the strands of my design. But he would learn. He would come face to face with the weighted reality of his choices. I watched him with steady indifference, silent confidence wrapping around me like a second skin. The thrill of realization settled deep within, a visceral pulse of cold momentum coursing through me. I could almost taste the exposing truth at the back of my throat, tangy and electric, ready to unfurl itself like a serpent unraveling in the sun. His world was built on layers of facades, and soon those would peel away, one by one, revealing a vulnerability he would never foresee. I found solace in the silent preparation, the scent of impending chaos nurtured by my relentless pursuit. He thought himself untouchable, yet I was sharpening the blade of revelation, pushing it ever closer to his own throat. As the clock ticked deeper into that quiet dusk, I braced myself with the understanding that soon the stage would no longer be mine alone. His laughter, thick in the air, would turn to echoes, fleeing into shadows. The first notes of deceit were about to resound, unseen threads tightening their grip. And with it all, in the stillness before the storm, came the dull thrum of victory. It had all been set in motion without a sound, the perfect orchestration of vengeance in quiet triumph. The lines between reality and performance blurred, each day a subtle thread woven into a tapestry of deceit. I blended into the background of his life, a silent observer orchestrating a grand narrative while he reveled in his own self-importance. With every interaction, the illusion of friendship solidified, a carefully constructed facade that concealed the predator grasping at the edges of his arrogance. His laughter rang hollow, an echo reverberating off the walls of our shared experiences like a ghost haunting a once vibrant home. Dinners became productions, where I feigned delight as he boasted about accomplishments riddled with half-truths. "Did you hear about my promotion?" he would declare, pride spilling from his lips, unaware that each syllable was a note in the symphony I was composing. After all, the weight of his bravado nourished my resolve, feeding the tension that I nurtured like a delicate flower hidden in plain sight. Every interaction became a stroke on a canvas stretching beyond mere revenge, each inflection, each glance, a step in an elaborate dance. I mastered the art of mirroring, his confidence reflected back at him, a perpetual feedback loop that twisted tighter with each conversation. I observed how he relished the attention, little realizing it was the noose I was skillfully weaving, strand by strand, invisible yet unyielding. When he checked his phone mid-conversation, chuckling at a joke from a distant friend, I took note. His careless distractions, painted over with the brush of ease, disguised the slips in his demeanor, a fracture in the veneer he prided himself upon. "You think you hold the power," I mused silently each time he sagged comfortably into the chair beside me. "But it is I who channels the strings." I was a puppeteer holding the reins of his ignorance. Every revelation, he shared a confession, a raw piece of the puzzle I was constructing. Late into the nights, I found myself hunched over my computer, fingers dancing across the keyboard like a pianist awaiting the crescendo. The folder labeled "For the Day" grew thicker, crammed with evidence, a meticulously curated collection of his vulnerabilities disguised as triumphs. I understood now the beauty of preparation. Each detail carefully arranged was another step towards the precipice, where his arrogance would plummet into the abyss I had concealed. The moments we shared were excruciatingly sweet. He was becoming the architect of his own demise, digging deeper into his arrogance while I shoved the shovel into his hand, shrouded in the cloak of friendship. The less he feared me, the more reckless he became. I watched as he spiraled, every token of camaraderie serving to loosen the chains of caution around his neck. I encouraged his freedom with every smile, every casual affirmation of his accomplishments. He felt the wind at his back, but soon enough, that wind would turn to a storm. He just wouldn't see it coming. Emotions were stored away, locked in cabinets of composure and calm. Restraint flowed through me like lifeblood. I knew precisely how far to push, how to ensure the thrill of the hunt pulsed in my veins without betraying my intent. The day I received his latest dismissal, another lie crafted to keep me aligned with his carefully concocted reality, I plucked it from the ether, saving it into the ever-growing archive. The final piece of a puzzle that he didn't even know existed. I felt the thrill race through me like a violent flash of lightning breaking a mournful stillness. The calm that enveloped me was a prelude to the chaos I had engineered, every ticking second a countdown echoing in the hollows of my heart. Soon. I held my breath like a drawn bowstring, ready to release my carefully articulated plan into the unknown. He remained obliviously self-assured, an architect clad in arrogance, sealing his own fate with every careless step. And as I tightened my grip on the threads I had spun so meticulously, I felt the anticipation coiling like a serpent preparing to strike, silent, predatory, and patient. When the moment arrived, he would feel the full weight of what he had sown, and right then, that invisible line between him and the destruction I had orchestrated would snap. I sat in the stillness, The finality of my silence, a weapon sharper than any blade. The calm swelled, deathly quiet, pregnant with possibility. He had no idea I was the one holding the match to his house of cards, and when it collapsed, the ashes would rain down around him. The stage was set. Now, all that remained was the final act. 6 months of meticulous orchestration culminated in a single electrifying moment. The calm, cultivated from the ashes of betrayal, insulated me, yet an unexpected cloud threatened to cast a shadow over my carefully laid plans. It began with a conversation, casual, harmless, a thread of banter exchanged over beers. But embedded within that lightheartedness lay the tremors of a warning. "Did you hear about Marcus?" he asked, his voice dripping with an insouciance that was almost maddening. "Word on the street is he started connecting the dots about that deal we made last year. Can you imagine? He's been digging. A chill swirled in my chest. The facade of my control trembled. I'd underestimated Marcus. I had not factored in the possibility of prying eyes and curious minds. I'd woven a tapestry of silence, but all it took was one thread to be pulled for everything to unwind. "A strange coincidence," I remarked, pretending his words were nothing more than echoes lingering in the background. Inside, however, my mind was a wild web of recalibrations. I had offered him the rope to hang himself, yet now it felt as though it might wrap itself around my own throat. His carelessness could easily unearth the careful constructs I had engineered, explosive truths that lay dormant, waiting to be triggered. "Yeah," he continued, oblivious. "I mean, if he finds out." A silence spread between us. The stolen breaths exchanged were more potent than the bravado of his preceding laughter. I caught glimpses of my reflection in his eyes, a predator poised amidst a delicate hunt, yet now skittish, nervous about the inevitable proximity of discovery. "Nothing to worry about," I replied, my voice steady, a taut string vibrating beneath flawless tension. "People gossip. Let him chatter." Control became more valuable than the information I'd neutralized for so long. I placed my trust in silence. The roar of reckless arrogance could still drown out the whispers. But doubt flickered in the periphery, an errant shadow at the edge of my plans. I returned home, peeling off the layers of the day, the mask slipping to reveal flesh taut with tension. My phone vibrated, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed hope to bloom. That perhaps it was a final confirmation, a detailed piece of evidence that would seal the fate of my calculated demolition. Instead, it was a message. Marcus, not of concern, but of friendship. "Can we meet? I need to talk about what's been happening." My heart pounded with adrenaline, anticipation, and sudden fear twisting together, creating a knot in my gut. I had fostered this dynamic of superiority, yet here I was, caught in a delicate balance between the knife's edge of revelation and buried truth. "This wasn't part of the script," floated through my mind like a haunting refrain, echoing the remnants of my previous plans. I took a breath, one steady inhalation followed by the exhale of calm. Panic was a beat I refused to dance to. Instead, I felt the innate urge to recalibrate. The knife would be sharpened once again, cutting through the fog of doubt that threatened to envelop me. In the quiet of my room, illuminated by the soft glow of the screen, I deleted the message rather than respond. He would not find me vulnerable, nor would he see the cracks. Instead, I would watch closely, observe the way the tension unfurled in the days to come. I would gather my thoughts, recalibrate my plans, ensuring that every move felt calculated. precise, cold. As the night deepened around me, I dove back into the folder labeled "For the Day." The memories, evidence, the meticulously collected truths stared back at me, a reservoir of power and strategy. I made a mental note of every tick of the clock, every shadow lurking in corners I had previously ignored. I felt the familiar rush of cold resolve, sharpening my focus like flint against steel. The storm hadn't merely been approaching, it had arrived, raising the stakes and shifting the foundations beneath me. I would adjust. I would adapt. The unseen threads binding me to this narrative grew more pronounced with each pulse of adrenaline. It was time to wait, patiently forging ahead like a knife's edge redefined under fire. Calmly and precisely, I would avoid the trap his arrogance sought to extend. I could still build the crescendo. With the right recalibration, each note would resonate louder than before. "Let him dig," I whispered to the silence, a mantra wrapped in steel. "Let Marcus unearth the truths." The journey was still in my control. Only now it would carry a rhythm thicker than blood, one that would echo long after the storm began to settle. Every move became deliberate, every silence a festering tension. He wouldn't know I was watching, observing even as I pretended to forgive. The truth was the storm would break eventually, but I, the architect of ruin, would stand unyielding in the eye, the calm core within chaos. A sharpened blade ready to strike, reflexively waiting for the time to unleash an avalanche so silent, it would render him entirely defenseless against the realities I had long prepared to unleash. In the space between foreboding and anticipation, I felt the world shift on its axis. This was merely a recalibration, a touch of adrenaline intoxicated with purposeful intent. I adjusted my grip, neatly anticipating every turn, every tremor, ready for the forthcoming execution of fate that would redefine our realities. The dawn of the final act crept into view, illuminating the edges of my carefully constructed life, where shadows danced and whispered their secrets. I felt the shift, a quiet recalibration in the atmosphere, an electricity that hummed at the back of my mind. I had become the architect of my revenge, not out of anger, but of cold recalibration, turning pain into an intricate plan, evolving like a phoenix from the ashes of betrayal. Every interaction with him had been a thread tied into the greater tapestry of my objective. I was no longer merely a spectator to his hubris. I had become the instrument through which he would experience reckoning. I reveled in the silence that lay between us, a comfortable void that masked my approach with deceptive ease. Each laugh, every shared meal, fell like a strategic piece on a chessboard, a patience that fortified my resolve. "Did you see the latest numbers?" he'd exclaim, his voice dripping with arrogance, oblivious to the deft hand that guided his every step. These were not mere boasts. They were breadcrumbs leading him deeper into the forest of his own overconfidence. Little did he know that with every proclamation of victory, he laid more bricks in the wall of his own impending downfall. I had encouraged this inebriation of self-worth. It fortified my plans as he sank deeper into the complacency of his own making. Finding comfort in my calculations, I returned to my sanctuary, hunching over the glowing screen, my altar. The folder labeled "For the Day" bore witness to the tapestry I'd woven, now layered with the final threads of meticulous evidence. Screenshots, voice notes, financial documents, all a testament not only to his faults, but to the undercurrents that would soon surge forth with silent ferocity. Each click echoed in my ears like a drum roll heralding the inevitable climax. patience, I reminded myself as I navigated the labyrinthine architecture of my scheme, a hunter poised to strike. I had nurtured my facade of friendship long enough. The shadows grew longer with each passing day, and I sensed the gravity of breadth weighing heavily in the air. As I reviewed my notes, I felt the tension coil tighter, each detail sharpening my focus like flint against a blade, glistening with anticipation. Then, without warning, a straining crack swelled in the silence of my planning. His laughter, once the beating heart of our interactions, began to fade. Whispers crept in from undisclosed sources. Rumors of scrutiny filtered through our casual gatherings, a new chink in his armor. "It's just Marcus," he had brushed off, but I could see the tremor in his confidence as he mentioned the name, fear creeping into his bravado. I had sensed the shifting tides. New attention was turning towards him, and I too was calculating my next move. In the quiet chambers of my mind, I relished the thought of his unraveling. Behind the mask, I nurtured a dark satisfaction, knowing that he remained blissfully unaware of the tethered lies that would soon sever the ground beneath him. I would remain the calm before the storm, letting him drift freely, unaware of the chains that I was weaving tighter, inch by inch. "Let him dig," I muttered under my breath, a mantra wrapped in steel. Let Marcus unearth the truths. It was an invitation for him to explore the depths of his arrogance, a chasm that would swallow him whole if he wasn't careful. I wouldn't reveal myself. That was what made it exquisite. Each moment he remained carefree. Every ounce of arrogance unwittingly played to his demise. Then, just as the stars aligned in perfect intent, I made my decision. It was time to unveil my carefully crafted edifice. I had waited long enough. The moment to strike was near. The final entry in my folder, the last lie saved into existence, would become the opening act for a personal theater, the consequence of his betrayal, the mirror to his distorted reflection. In less than 24 hours, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the dark tapestry of night unfolded before us, the truth would cascade outwards. It would pierce through the sanctuary of ignorance he had constructed. Friends, family, colleagues, each would become a part of the audience to this dark performance. He still didn't know it was me, standing in the shadows, waiting with quiet anticipation. I felt alive with purpose, a controlled storm ready to break and raise the walls of his carefully curated illusion. The adrenaline surged, igniting the air with a thrill unlike any other. This was the moment I had prepared for, the unveiling of truths wrapped in the allure of silence. No confrontation would mar the purity of my intent. I would remain hidden, a ghost haunting the halls of his awakening. He would open that USB labeled mirror, and I would watch, breath held, as the scales fell from his eyes, revealing a reality he had built on the foundation of lies. The gradual realization would be exquisite, slicing through his confidence like a cold knife, exposing the raw nerve of truth. The calm I had cultivated would erupt into the certainty of his collapse. For now, I embraced the silent power coursing through me. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I had evolved into something darker, colder, an architect of his destruction, waiting to strike. Revenge wasn't merely retribution, it was mastery of the moment, and I had mastered every nuance of pain, altering it into a finely tuned weapon of psychological precision. Just beyond the threshold of peace and chaos, I felt the finale beckon like a dark song, a symphony of silence ready to unleash its fury, revealing the intricate dance of shadows, as realization dawned upon him like the first light of a new day. The storm would break, and he would understand, far too late, the price of underestimating what lay beneath the surface. The air shifted in the room, heavy with the electric tension of anticipation. I sipped my coffee, the warmth encircling my fingers while I watched him unravel, each twitch and nervous glance a detail burned into my memory. His laughter had faded, replaced by the uncertain murmur of whispers that seemed to follow him like dark shadows. I had become adept at hiding in plain sight, a predator amongst the sheep. He was blissfully unaware, still dressed in the arrogance that had grown like a weed in the fertile soil of his self-importance. "Did you hear?" he would say, his voice a mixture of excitement and a hint of panic. There was a strange pleasure in watching his bravado crack, a distant thunderstorm slowly rumbling beneath the surface. He lost a client today, a significant one. The fallout lingered like a ghost in the room, palpable and oppressive. The glances from mutual acquaintances were measured now, filled with silent judgments. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I could see it, the flicker of doubt creeping in. "Just a rough patch," he insisted, but I could hear the tremble in his voice, a well-rehearsed lie peeling away under scrutiny. "Everything is fine," he would repeat, like a mantra, while I remained the picture of calm. I nodded, throwing out casual words of encouragement, masking the satisfaction that simmered beneath my skin like a slow burn. I didn't have to raise my voice. My silence, my restraint, wielded more power than his frantic rebuttals could ever hope to achieve. With each passing day, more invitations vanished from our social circle, each missed meeting like a nail in his metaphorical coffin. Conversations shifted awkwardly away from him. Whispers replaced invitations. Confusion replaced camaraderie. I remained unfazed by it all. In fact, I relished it. This was everything I had patiently orchestrated. A symphony of chaos composed in secret, with him under the false impression that the world still revolved in his favor. Over drinks last night, I caught a glimpse of his increasingly frayed nerves. A conversation about Marcus, a name that echoed ominously through our circles, sent him spiraling into paranoia. Why would he care about me? I didn't do anything wrong, he stammered, eyes darting around as if looking for someone to reassure him, to pull him from this abyss. But reassurance didn't come from me. I offered nothing but an understanding nod, an empty gesture wrapped in calculated indifference. He began reaching out to friends, desperately trying to salvage what remained of his reputation. But each response came with hollow assurances, promises wrapped in ambiguity. "I'll look into it," they would say, their tone suggesting a pitiful mix of concern and amusement. It was exquisite torture to watch his confidence further erode, a slow dissolution of the man he thought he was. "Haven't you thought about just laying low for a while?" I suggested, feigning innocence as I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the dark liquid swirl. It was a tactical question, designed to probe at the very security he clung to. Each word was wrapped in a veneer of concern, but beneath it lay the cold steel of manipulation. His response was a mixture of bravado and anxiety. "No way. I can't let them think I'm hiding." He misread my inquiries, believing them to be expressions of friendship, not the sharpened blades of truth I intended. He kept digging, and I kept watching. The more he floundered, the more the world stripped itself away from him. His job, friends, dignity, all of it crumbling into soft dust beneath layers of delusions and lies. I could almost taste the revenge, sweet and satisfying, as it danced just out of reach. This was my moment to savor. With the storm closing in around him, his phone buzzed incessantly. Text messages from acquaintances urging reassurance and deliberation. "You all right?" the messages echoed. Yet I remained distant, sipping my coffee as I saw his panic bubble to the surface like a pot about to boil over. He kept trying to find answers, and all the while, I sipped my coffee. Each quiet moment was a testament to my precision, a reminder of the blade hovering just above his throat. He was spiraling into isolation, each missed connection wrapping tighter around him, a silence louder than any accusation would have been. The call came just before midnight, a frantic attempt for clarity, for understanding, but all it came back to was confusion. "What's happening to me?" he pleaded, the bravado draining from his voice until only vulnerability remained. "Get some rest," I replied coolly, feigning concern, though his suffering delighted me silently. "You'll figure it out." The calmness in my voice was the final detail that hammered home the truth. There was nothing left for him to grasp. All those months of pretending, of playing a part, were coming to fruition. And I was just getting started. I felt that cold resolve settle deeper. Soon enough, everything he had built on lies would crumble under the weight of his own arrogance, and I would be the silent architect, watching from the shadows as he dismantled in real time. I would remain unscathed, unacknowledged, a phantom behind the scenes of his downfall. None but the quiet specter of victory bore witness to the chaos I had sown. And as I regarded him through the veil of my carefully curated concoction of emotions, it was not vengeance I felt, but profound power, more potent than fury, more relentless than rage. It was the thrill of the system I had engineered, the symphony I was able to control, the coming storm quietly poised to erupt. The night stretched out before me, an unmarked canvas, calm and inviting like the pre-dawn stillness. Anticipation hung heavy in the air, a barely there pulse of electricity that danced beneath the surface, begging to be unleashed. I sat alone, fingers drumming softly on the table, each tap a reminder of the meticulous orchestration that had brought me to this moment. The USB lay before me, innocuous and unassuming, yet it held within it the culmination of 6 months of calculated plotting, silence papered over betrayal. He thought he was oblivious, a king in a fortress made of arrogance, while I, silent, unseen, had layered the foundation of his collapse. Another sip of coffee, desperately hot against the cool night air. Each mouthful was a new reminder of the arsenal I had amassed. Screenshots, voice notes, the taint of betrayal laid bare for anyone willing to peek inside his facade. I could almost taste the intricate flavors of sweet revenge on my tongue, rich and fulfilling, ready to burst forth in a crimson tide. In the shadows, the walls whispered their own secrets. Would he even recognize the stillness surrounding him, the way it pulsed like an approaching storm? Or would he continue to flounder in the murky waters of his maddening self-delusion, completely ignorant of the predator lurking beneath? Eyes flitting from the clock to the USB, I felt the weight of time pressing upon me, each second heavy with the promise of revelation. He would open the folder, innocently curious, and then the dam would break. One click, and the reality he had crafted would begin to dissolve, layer by layer. "Do it," I silently urged in those moments of stillness. "Let the tides come crashing down." There was a thrill in the cadence of chaos, a music that swelled, an orchestra waiting for its conductor, and I was that cold maestro, ready to pull the first note from the silence. I could see it all in my mind, a flicker of confusion, the dawning horror in his eyes as each piece of evidence surfaced in front of him, reconfiguring the reality he had chosen to ignore. Friends, once loyal, would watch with sympathy turn to pity. Colleagues, those who had once admired his bravado, would blink in disbelief. "Is this true?" they would whisper, looking at him. And I imagined him stumbling, grasping for an anchor that would never materialize. He would choke on the weight of consequence, the shards of his own making slicing through his bravado. Yet the best part? I would remain anonymous. I was a ghost in his life, an echo of the trust he so easily squandered, now rising from the grave he had dug for himself. I had spent months preparing for this moment. With every laugh, every rehearsed joke, I steered him away from the gnawing reality beneath his effortless facade. The phone, charged with the potential of connection, felt heavy in my pocket. I could text him, offer solace or feigned friendship, but what would it serve? I felt the tightness in my stomach, an exclamation point atop the calm facade. How I craved to witness him unravel. Each tick of the clock pulled me deeper into my dark pleasure, murky waters swirling with possibilities. The outcome felt inevitable, almost predestined. A performance months in the making, and now the curtain was set to rise. The USB was the key, the unwitting instrument of my revenge, held tightly within my grip. I could imagine the warmth of my fingers surrounded by its cool housing. The final act teetered on the edge of brilliance, a single decision waiting to initiate the cataclysmic crescendo. With a breath, I resolved not to interfere. Yes, watch him flounder, drawing ever nearer to the brink. As the minutes stretched, I felt the exhilaration pound like artillery in my chest. I didn't need to scream, to shout, to make a grand gesture. The stillness I had cultivated was its own form of power, a tactic as deadly as any weapon in hand. Everything I had pieced together stood ready to collapse around him, like the house of cards he had built with lies. Outside, the world continued on, blissfully unaware of the unraveling that was about to descend among us. Yet for me, this was the core of my existence, the satisfying breath before the plunge. I lifted my coffee cup, tilting it towards the darkness, surrendering to the anticipation. I would enjoy the spectacle unfolding before me, the day of reckoning poised to dawn. Revenge had been a silent symphony, and now, oh now, it was time to let the music play. The soft hum of my phone crackled through the quiet, but I pushed aside the trivial sounds of notifications. The USB sat before me, a tempting siren luring in the night, holding the culmination of 6 months of calculated revenge. Every screenshot, every memory I had crafted in silence was resting within its sleek shell, ready to unveil the intricate web of deception he had spun. Not long now. I could almost hear the heartbeat of his impending confusion humming in the air, energy radiating between us like static before a storm. Beneath his facade of indifference, I knew he must feel the weight of anticipation. It was palpable, an energy that thrummed beneath his skin, even if he had not yet realized the full extent of the embrace I had woven. "Did you get the report?" he asked, maintaining that same overconfident pomp, his arrogance driving me closer to the precipice of my thrill. The smile plastered on his face soured slightly with each passing glance. I mirrored his look of eager interest, nodding as if to amplify his bravado. "Of course," I replied, the knots of tension swirling deep within me, coiling tighter as I pushed my coffee cup away. But are you sure everything is fine? I mean, with Marcus sniffing around? He dismissed the name with a wave of the hand, laughter rolling off his tongue like thunder, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. Marcus doesn't have the guts to approach me. He chuckled, the sound hollow, a fragile mask draped over an unsteady foundation. In that moment, I did nothing. I simply observed, the predator in me cresting over the rabbit, gnawing at secrets he had left unguarded. The truth was surfacing now, slipping through the cracks of his bravado like water seeping through sand. Beneath his laughter, the fear trailed, unrecognizable yet potent. With every word he spoke, I felt the distance between us grow. I had become the hand that guided the puppet strings, manipulating his confidence until he tumbled, headlong into alarms he dared not acknowledge. There would come a time when the culmination of my patience bore fruit. I watched him fidgeting, trying to dismiss the shadows clinging to him like whispered ghosts. "It's just a rough patch," he insisted to the group, but I saw the tremors under his bravado, and I savored it. Hours dragged on, but I was calm. The anticipation held itself against the air, allowing me to control the tempo deliberately. Minutes stretched to eternity as scattered murmurs dripped disappointment into the poisoned chalice he now sipped, the undetected cocktail of anxiety bubbling to the surface with every fading smile directed at me. Then, the moment came. His phone buzzed violently, a chain of messages delivering a serial blow to the confidence he had cradled. "What's happening?" he muttered, confusion flitting across his brows as I pored over the facade of interest, while knowing that the dam was about to break. Another buzz, laughter on the verge of disbelief barely masking the truth. I smiled gently, feigning concern. "Everything all right?" He denied it with words, but his shaking hands told a different story. Just the usual," he stammered, his bravado thinning as quickly as his breath. My silence hung like a blade, ready to drop. The chat groups began filling up with his name. "Heard about the axing. Surprised it took them this long." Every whisper floated through the air, and I felt the rush of adrenaline through me, a blunt weapon in the face of chaos. And then it arrived, the message of all messages. Clarity spiraled down, punctuated by dread. "What's happening to me? Everyone is talking about me, and I don't understand why." It was time. I watched the shadow of his panic distorting the light that once bathed him in glory, his kingdom crumbling. A regal edifice built upon deceptions and midday flares of imagined divinity. I didn't need to respond. I didn't make a sound. Silence became the hymnal of truth, white-knuckled and manicured, ready to snap. "Get some rest." My voice was smooth, syrupy, the weight of it pressing down on him like an anvil. The release was surreal, intoxicating. I could feel the layers I had woven closing in around him. "What's happening?" His voice served as a tragic plea, unwittingly grounding my satisfaction against the hollow relief twisting through me. "Tomorrow," I sighed, savoring the weight of his eyes as I retracted. "You'll see." The USB toyed with me, and I let it linger beneath the surface like a shark's fin, a quiet warning foreshadowing the storm I had crafted. I was nothing to him, a ghost in the dark corners of his confidence, yet behind the shadows whispered the reckoning I had meticulously prepared. The next morning, as he booted up his system, I remained a constant in his wasted semblance of identity. He pressed the USB into the port, the moment he expected nothing. In that instant, I felt the quiet hum of inevitability weave its way back into the fabric of our story. One final reveal, one discordant note, circling back to where betrayal first began. "You thought you were invulnerable," I whispered to myself as the seconds ticked by. Watching him navigate through the folder, the glee he sought so desperately becoming the whirlpool pulling him into a fever dream he never envisioned. As the truths dropped like sequined knives, shattering his illusion of security, he grasped frantically, each discarded truth carving deeper into his confidence. Number it can't be true. I watched him shatter, piece by piece, a glass sculpture caught in a cyclone, all from the comfort of lingering silence. The connections shifted around him, thin threads of loyalty snapping as whispers transformed into laughter. Pity turned brittle. Did you really believe they'd stay loyal when the truth demanded a reckoning? Every revelation became a turning point, a knife twisting deeper into the wounds he had fashioned with his own hands. The taste of his defeat lay on the edge of my lips, intoxicating, victorious, and yet strangely calm. Soon the fallout would morph into a tornado, daring to strip him bare. But there was nothing left to be said. I had said everything without uttering a single word. The credits were rolling on this personal theater, the scenes laid out for all to witness as he crashed to earth, thoughts splintering around him. As I watched his form twist and fracture, enveloped in chaos, I felt only exhilaration. Nothing remained for me to offer, no chance for forgiveness nor reconciliation. I had set the stage, and I had played my part to silent perfection. Finally, he was left grasping for anchor points in a universe that had cast him adrift. And I, the arbiter of truth, the maestro of the symphony he had orchestrated, faded gracefully into the periphery, silent, remorseless, having delivered justice without the need for a single scream. The choice was finally made, and with it, an intricate tapestry of feelings unraveled into clarity. Silence hung heavily in the air as I took my last steps away from what had once been a tangled mess of friendship and deceit. The gravity of the moment settled around me, demanding acknowledgement, yet I exhaled slowly, knowing that I was now free. Each footfall echoed like a rifle shot in the empty corridor of my mind, releasing me from the burdens that had clung so tightly. Months of pretending, each day orchestrated to keep him unaware of my brewing storm, all rolled away like a receding tide. I wasn't looking back. Those shadows no longer had the power to haunt me. I had become that which I had always envied, unyielding, detached, liberated from the weight of unresolved animosity. The world around me felt vast, open, brimming with possibilities unshackled by the walls I had built in response to betrayal. I would not suffer the pain of remembering. I had contained it, distilled it down to a quiet, pale reflection that floated behind me like dust behind my heels. The cooler air brushed against my skin, a reminder that I was all that remained of the chaos I had orchestrated. He had crumbled without my intervention, a beautiful collapse downward, layers peeling away before my very eyes, a masterpiece in destructive artistry. I was no longer shackled by the need for vengeance. I had reclaimed my life, and yet the taste of justice was bittersweet, like a fine wine that leaves a sting behind. It was necessary, undeniably so, but now it also felt strangely irrelevant. I had secured peace not through noise or revenge, but by embracing the stillness, the momentary pause that follows a great crescendo. As I walked into the fading light, images cascaded through my mind like whispers in the dark. The moments of his arrogance, the echoes of laughter that rang hollow, they all coalesced into a single truth. He thought he was invulnerable. In the end, it was not mere revenge that made all of this worthwhile. It was the reclamation of myself, the restoration of my own identity stripped bare and reborn. Revenge isn't fire, I reminded myself. Each step forward grounding me in this newfound wisdom. It's ice, and I became colder than he ever imagined. I was not a wrathful ghost haunting the wreckage. I was the architect of clarity, now unbound by the emotional chaos that once reigned in my heart. The shadows receded as if in acknowledgement of my resolve. There was no need for cries of victory or gestures of defiance. The cool silence wrapped around me like a shroud of unspoken triumph. I had set the stage, but now felt the desire to leave it all behind, to turn the page to a new chapter unfettered by his presence. The silence that followed my departure was the loudest it had ever been. It whispered of the future, hinting at a journey set to unfurl without the weight of lies and betrayal, yet tinged with the remembrance of how far I'd come. I paused, breathing in the crisp air filled with potential, allowing the world around me to resonate within my new foundation, the echoes of closure mingling sweetly with the winds of freedom. This path was open and waiting, revealing a horizon unmarred by the stains of my past. I turned my back fully and unequivocally, severing every tether that sought to pull me back, marveling not in revenge's hollowness, but in the fullness of my recovered self. Whatever remnants of our shared history remained were locked away in a vault of memory that would no longer compel me to linger. With every stride, I released the shadows of what once was, stepping into the light of what could again be. My footsteps faded into the distance, the long road before me stretching endless, uncharted. Wherever it led, I would follow, carrying with me the wisdom of calm retaliation and the power of serene closure. A lifetime reclaimed, nothing left to prove.